Amy Zielinski from Divine Union, here with Ageless Conception. Today we're going to talk about discovering our shadows. This is a really important area of our work, our whole lives, but particularly when we're working on something as important, as significant, as life-changing as becoming a parent. Each of us has what we call shadows. In the psychological world and some of the spiritual worlds, we talk about them as shadows. And these are parts of our personality, parts of our psyche that are not forefront in our consciousness. There's all sorts of reasons why we develop shadows. They're a really significant part of who we are. But as you can imagine, it's a little tricky to work with our shadows because they're shadows. Really, really important to identify them. A lot of times what we do with our shadow parts is we kind of disown them. We push them away. That doesn't help us in any way, especially when we're trying to open to the fullness of who we are so that we can conceive children, so that we can carry children, so that we can give birth or welcome them in whatever form they come, whatever way they come. And as we are parents, it's not helpful to push aside any part of us because that makes us less open. So one piece of very helpful work as you're going through this process is to play with your shadows. And I use the term play very consciously because a lot of us have difficulty working with our shadow because it might have our shadows, because they might have shame and embarrassment around them. So one thing I invite you to do is try to be playful and curious. This is such important work for you. It's important for your child. Those of you who are parents already have discovered this. I certainly did as I became a mother. And that is a lot of parts of myself that I had pushed away came up in the forefront as I was beginning to be a mom. And I started to realize that I was negating parts of myself in ways that I would never negate my children, parts of them. So this is really good practice for parenting, to embrace the fullness of who you are so that you're ready to embrace the fullness of that being who is coming into your care. It's very helpful to work with your shadows in ways that bypass your logical mind. Your conscious thinking, planning, organizing brain is the part that shoved the shadows out. So when we try to use the same tools for working with our shadows as we use for examining our thoughts, for instance, we don't get anywhere. The places where our shadows can be found are oftentimes in our dreams, in our emotional responses to situations and other people in our lives. And we can work with our shadows and find our shadows through our creativity. So this work right here is about discovering your shadows, starting to meet these parts of you, welcome them. I'll give you an example of one of my shadows that became really apparent during my years of carrying babies. I was incredibly healthy in many ways when I got pregnant with my first child. I had not eaten meat in a long time. I had exercised a lot. I felt really good. And so my conscious brain kept telling me, you're healthy, this is going to be an easy pregnancy, there's nothing to worry about. But I started to have these dreams that something was going wrong, that something was going wrong with my body, not with the baby, with my body. And where those dreams led me when I decided to turn and face them, took me a while to do that, but they led me to some really shadow parts of me that were afraid of my own health. That's the way shadows work. They don't seem to make sense, but they're very, very real. So there were parts of me that were afraid of owning how well I was. So they came up for me in dreams. And at first what I did was try to push the dreams away. Oh, they're just nightmares, or they're just worrying dreams. When I opened and said, wait, what do you have to tell me? I actually discovered little girl parts of me that were afraid of wellness for all sorts of reasons. And I got to go back and really nurture those little parts of me. All so helpful, not only for me, because I got to embrace a part of myself, which makes me more open and receptive. But then when my kids came along, I had practiced embracing the child in me, and I was better able to embrace the fullness of them. It's just one example. So the ways you're going to start to discover your shadows is through dreaming, especially when we open to something large, like trying to welcome a child in our lives. If we consciously set the intent to open, and if we say, I am ready and willing to discover everything that I need to in order to be the parent I want to be. When we do that consciously, the shadow parts of us will come up. So set the intent. We'll do that a little bit later together. Set the intent that you want to discover your shadows. Make a commitment to yourself that you want to be gentle and loving. No blame. No blame for these shadows. They'll just go back and hide again if there's a lot of blame and anger. Just open and welcome. And you'll start to notice that your dream work will change. You might have dreams that really lead you down paths of discovery, different parts of you. Another wonderful place to discover your shadows is in artwork. Work that's just for you, creations that are just for you. So paintings, poems. Sit down, set the intent. I want my shadow to come forth. I want shadow parts of me, parts that are disowned, parts that I have neglected. I want them to come forward and see what happens. You would be amazed at the depth of who you are when we stop pushing away parts that we don't want to see, when we open and say, I want to see everything that's here. I want to embrace all of who I am. And another really helpful way to start discovering your shadows is to pay attention to your reaction to other people. Everyone in your life can serve as a mirror for you. So sometimes the person in your life who seems to annoy you the most, whose behavior you just find repellent, you just don't want to be around this person, they have something to teach you about your shadow. Sometimes it's really straightforward. You may notice that, for instance, if you've repressed a lot of your anger, like I did for decades, people who get angry around you feel very threatening. So when I was working and really starting to want to open to all parts of me, I noticed, wow, I want to push away any time someone's angry around me. What's that trying to teach me? And I opened and I thought, I have a lot of repressed anger in here, and it's not doing me any good in here. Let me bring it up. But without that mirror out in the world, I might not have discovered that. So sometimes it's a one-to-one correspondence with these mirrors, and sometimes it's a little more tricky, the relationship between you and one of the beautiful mirrors in your life. For instance, you might have a lot of difficulty saying no to people. That might be a shadow part of you that you haven't really worked with, a part of you that feels like a pushover. But maybe you figured out how to not act like that on the surface. Maybe in your work world you're very gung-ho and you stand up for yourself, but there's still a part of you that you're trying to push away that's afraid to say no. So what you might find mirrored around here is a lot of people pushing you to say yes all the time. So if you want to work with your shadow in this way, really look to the people around you, and most importantly to your responses to them. So with this work, what we're doing is just discovering our shadows. And in the video called Clearing My Path, we're going to start to work with how to work with integrating shadows into our life, into this path of becoming pregnant or becoming parents. Right now the game is just discovering who's all there, starting to fill out the picture of who you are. We're going to do a practice to do this, a little process. For this process, Just like dreaming, just like artwork, just like using your mirrors, this is a process to start to get in touch with your shadow. It's called non-dominant handwriting, and I've been introduced to it years ago in my hospice training. It's really useful for getting to deeper parts of us that our conscious mind might not let us have access to so easily. So what I need you to do is grab some paper and 2 different pens if you can, 2 different colors. If you can't, that's okay. Pause the video while you go get those. When you come back, we'll do some non-dominant handwriting just to start to meet one of our shadows. Great, so you have your pen and you have 2 pens and your paper, and this is the way it works. I'll walk you through it as we go, but I'll just give you kind of an outline. What you're going to do is we're going to ask a question on the paper with 1 pen, and you'll write the question. I'll tell you what it is as we go. You'll write the question with your dominant hand, that is the hand you usually use for writing. And then you'll pick up the other color of pen with your non-dominant hand, and you'll allow the answer to flow forth from you. It's the easiest process in the world, and it is so helpful. Our dominant hand is very connected to the logic part of our brain, our conscious brain. So we are letting that take a little vacation. And by writing with the hand that we normally don't, we're opening up to deeper parts of our being so we can work with our shadow. Ready? Okay, close your eyes. Start with some deep breaths into your low belly. With every exhalation, breathe out any anxiety you have about this process. As soon as we begin to talk about shadows, sometimes anxiety will arise, or fear, or push away. Just imagine that with every exhalation you can get rid of a little bit. You can release a little bit of agitation or anxiety. Beautiful. And now, for the next few breaths, with every inhalation, I want you to imagine that you can inhale curiosity. The feeling of curiosity, wonder, and play. That's what we want to use for this process of discovering our shadows. Filling yourself with the feeling, with the energy of curiosity, of wonder, and of play. Beautiful, wonderful. So now pick up 1 pen with your dominant hand, the hand you normally use. And the first question is, what is one of my shadows that's ready to come forward and be seen? Write that out. What is one of my shadows that is ready to come forward and be seen? Wonderful. And when you've written that question, put that pen down. Pick up the other pen with your non-dominant handwriting and allow the answer to that question to appear on the page. Wonderful. You can continue to write as long as you like. If you need more time, just pause the video. And continue to write until you feel empty, until that part of you has answered that question for now. Good. Question number 2, and again, you're going to write with your dominant hand with the first color. And the question is, shadow, what do you have to teach me about conception and or parenthood? I'll say that again. Writing down the question, shadow, what do you have to teach me about conception and or parenthood? Putting that pen down, picking up the other pen with your non-dominant hand and allowing your shadow to speak. Again, pause the recording and take as long as you like to allow this part of you to answer this question. Our last question is number 3, again, writing the question with your dominant hand. Shadow, how can I honor you? Shadow, how can I honor you? Putting that pen down, picking up the other pen with your non-dominant hand, and begin to answer the question. Beautiful. Pause the recording if you need more time. When you're ready, put both pens down and put the paper aside. Close your eyes. And each of us put our hands on our heart. Put your hands in the center of your chest. And offer gratitude to your being for whatever ways information was presented today. Make some kind of promise or commitment to honor the shadow that you discovered today or worked with today and all other shadows. Wonderful. When you're ready, you can open your eyes. Once we start to discover our shadows, then we actually get to have the opportunity to open to the fullness and the beauty of who we really are. Each of us is this incredible masterpiece of light and shadow and depth. And as we open to something so transformational as becoming a parent, it's vital that we open all of us I support you in continuing to discover your shadows throughout your whole life, in honoring them and working with them. On the video Clearing My Path, you'll find a few clues, and we'll do some more work with specific areas of shadows that many of us have, and trying to clear some of the debris out of some of the areas that are shadowed, bring them to light. So that's on Clearing My Path. It is my hope, it is my prayer that each of us discovers and honors all parts of our being. May all beings know the depth and the fullness of who they really are. May all beings be at peace. May all beings be free. Thank you.